Hey everyone, welcome back to the Arts and Crafts portion of your Pause University experience. Today we're going to be exploring a variety of different ways to use watercolor to make a really dynamic and interesting image. We're going to be trying to make our own unique tree today. Now remember from last week, we talked a little bit about colors. When we're using colors, we can be conscious of how colors interact with one another. Remember that our greens, blues, and purples are what we call cool colors, whereas our yellows, oranges, and reds are our warm colors. Now, when we place colors that are opposite on this color wheel together, like blue and orange, or say green and red, remember those are called complementary colors. And I talked a little bit about how that works with our eyes in last week's segment, and why those become more vibrant when put next to one another. So when we choose our colors today, I'd like you to try and think about making this piece really vibrant by using colors next to one another that are complementary if you can. So, what do you need to be prepared to do this activity? Well, of course, you'll need a few important things. You'll need some paper. Now I've got this big piece of paper to demonstrate for you on today, but you'll probably have some smaller paper provided for you by the Pause University, or if you have some paper that you'd like to use at home, please feel free to do so. You'll need some watercolors. Really any watercolors will do. You will need some straws. One would be fine if you only have one. You'll need water to make your watercolors actually work. And you'll need some brushes. So I've got a stiffer bristle brush here. Also, an old toothbrush can be fun when we start splattering. So there are going to be two primary kinds of marks that we're going to be making today. One mark is going to be linear, which means that it is going to go in linear directions or sort of singular directions. And then another one is going to be more pointillist, which means that the splatters will be sort of located or create points on the paper. And that's going to create sort of a contrast in visual texture that we're really going to try and capitalize on to make our image really interesting. We're also going to be engaging the idea of chance and exploration and experimentation. So while you're making your tree, be open to letting the material move and do interesting things that you may otherwise not have intended it to do. So I want you to remember that this piece is totally your own. Unless you really want to, you don't have to try and make an exact tree that you see outside. You can choose any kinds of colors or any kind of real pattern that you want. I think that what makes art is what we include that is personal to us. And so I want you to choose colors that you feel would be fun for your tree. So I'm going to start with maybe a little bit of blue. So you can see that I'm using a combination of brush strokes to control the paint where I want it to go a certain direction, but then using my straw to blow the paint and make some really interesting almost like tenderly or drippy shapes that otherwise I probably couldn't have done on my own. So I'm going to keep making this tree pattern until I feel like it's at a good place, and then I'll start moving to my spatter. Now I really like the way that this blue has turned out for the trunk of the tree, but I think I want to include a little more color in the trunk. One thing you'll like about watercolor, one thing that I like a lot, is that you can blend it together really nicely when it's wet, and it can kind of create new colors, but then you can also still see the original colors. So let's play around with a little bit of that here. Great, I really like the way that turned out. I went ahead and added a little bit of yellow in there, and you can see that it kind of blended with this blue to make a bit of a green. So I think this is a great place to start my splattering and really get some kind of spots in there that contrast the linear qualities of this tree trunk so far. And remember, I'm going to be trying to use colors against these cooler colors that really enhance the energy and intensity of my image. So I'm going to try and be using some greens, yes, but also I'm going to explore using reds and oranges, maybe as kind of like flowers on the tree, just to kind of try and enhance the piece, make it more vibrant, more interesting for my viewer. So let's talk a little bit about how it's best that you actually go about using your paintbrush or toothbrush to splatter. Instead of moving the paint along the brush bristles, we're going to be filling the paint bristles with paint and then sort of pulling them back and letting, as they go forward, letting them kind of throw that paint onto the page. So I'll experiment using my brush here, and then I'll go over and experiment with my my toothbrush that I got and see how I can get different splattering effects. Now notice how at first I wasn't very cautious with the direction of my paint. And so I got a lot of splatters that went way up off the tree, like these leaves are blowing away. So what I needed to do was I needed to get much closer to the page and just make little flicks with my finger, and that's going to let me get some really great splatter that looks just like leaves on these branches. Okay, remember I've talked about color a little bit. Right now we've got overall a very cool composition with regard to color. So I'm going to add a little bit of warm colors in here to bring out the intensity that I see in the image. All right, now we're getting somewhere. You can see I've got some warmer colors, some oranges and reds, along with these blues, yellows, and greens. This is becoming a really dynamic tree. I'm really excited about this. Now let's see what this toothbrush can do if I can get some different textures in here. The toothbrush was a little bit harder to control than my paintbrush was, but that's okay. I really enjoy the process of experimenting with art, and I don't mind the difference in splatters here. I think it makes it more interesting. Maybe we can do a little more with this trunk. It seems a bit, well, boring compared to the rest of the piece. So maybe I can go in and use this brush to actually texture this. Let's find out. Maybe the toothbrush is better at making grass. I like this. Let's see what I can do. Okay, I feel really good about this piece. Remember that I was exploring my ability to use linear textures by putting some paint down, maybe painting some shapes, some general shape to the trunk, and then using my straw to blow any extra material out in different directions and create kind of this almost spiderwebby kind of texture. And then I used my paintbrush or toothbrush to kind of splatter the paint on there and really think about my cool colors versus my warm colors and how I can use complementary colors to enhance the energy of my piece. I then came down here and I added a little bit of extra color into the trunk because that one color blue just felt a little bit flat, especially against all the intensity that I created up here with my splattering. So I added some more colors in there to give it some density. And then I felt like this tree should really be, well, attached to the ground somewhere. And so I experimented with my toothbrush in ways to make a sort of a grassy texture. I probably could have got that with a brush as well, but why not try something new? And then I went ahead and filled out a little bit more of the ground to really make it seem like we're looking at this this tree, and it's really actually rooted in a place on the earth. All right, everyone. That's it for today's Pause University art activity. Showed you how to use paint to make linear textures and then also to make splatter textures that come together to make a really vibrant, dynamic image. Here's my tree. I hope you have fun making yours. Bye.